A few weeks ago I decided I wanted to animate that one creature comforts bit with the rat. With a Slugcat instead. And I did, as you just saw. Today I just want to go over the process for making this animation, and how it was helpful for some art block I've been dealing with. This idea popped into my head while I was watching some random creature comfort clips, and I immediately went to sketching out some silly Aardman style scugs. Just for a little context of what creature comforts is in case you aren't aware, it's a stop motion comedy show by Nick Park and Aardman Animations from 2003.
Hey! Massive legend here!
And chances are if you're watching this, you definitely know who they are. If somehow you don't, please turn off this video and go watch every Wallace and Gromit movie right now. Alright, now that the amount of people watching this video hasn't changed, the basic idea of the show is that they do mostly unscripted interviews with random people all over the UK, and then turn them into funny animated bits involving all sorts of animals.
No.
Run home.
No.
Bang ho.
Dream.
Okay.
There's actually a lot of clips from the show and behind the scenes stuff for free on YouTube, so I definitely recommend watching some of it. Stylistically, the most important plants to translate over to my Slugcat design were the eyes, which should be touching each other, the iconic toothy mouth and fish lips, which aren't present on every design, but I like to try and include if I can, and the noodly limbs. After that I figured I'd just go for it. I roughly planned out the armature and started with a base of aluminium foil. I added little wire legs and arms, oh, and the base of the head was foiled too. With the base done, I covered it with my oil-based clay, and once I began to add the little details, it started to look much more like a Slugcat. I decided to make the eyes, nose and blue fruit out of polymer clay, as that's what I had on hand. I believe in Aardman's case, things like eyes and Gromit's nose for example are made of resin, probably. The eyes I made in particular ended up super fragile. Of course they made it to the end, but they were hanging on for dear life by the time I was done. Now, this is where tragedy strikes, mainly because I'm a dum-dum. So I've made a handful of stop-motion puppets in the past, but they've all been fabric-based, so the armature is mainly important for posability. But with a plasticine type of clay, it doesn't need armature unless it's quite large, which Aardman puppets are, but mine is only 4 inches compared to around 8. All this to say that the armature not only served no purpose, but was an active detriment. This is because the wires made it pretty much impossible to move the limbs without destroying them completely. So yeah, I had to start again from this point, but it's not all bad. I think it's probably good I reset at this point, because the clay I selected was pretty soft and hard to work with. And also I'd done a poor job of keeping it dust free and it was quickly becoming a lint cat. So, Culg number 2. This time I made them completely out of clay and decided to switch to a different brand, Hue to be specific. It's a type of clay presented to be for animation, whereas the previous type I was using is more for random crafts and stuff. To try and avoid any bits of dust, I washed my hands super often, and didn't wear a woolly jumper, which I don't know why I thought that was smart. Anyway, I made it much the same as the first time minus the armature, and I made them sit instead. Once finished I did a test animation. The main issues were that it was moving around a lot, so I needed to be more conscious of that. I tried a few different things to keep them in place while animating, but in the end I just ended up referring back to the first frame more often, which worked well enough. So before I can start animating the final product, I need to make a set. As adorable as I think a comically large microphone would look next to a little Slugcat, I thought it would be cool if it was an overseer instead, since that fits more in the world. So with that in mind, I came up with 2 ideas for where our scug could be. Memory conflux eating neurons, or outskirts munching blue fruits. I couldn't decide myself, so I left it up to a poll from my lovely patrons. And they picked outskirts, so that's what I made. I kept it simple and just painted up some cardboard. And I was going for purpley, but it ended up very blue, which is fine I suppose. And with that all out of the way, I finally started animating. I had in mind what I wanted it to look like. I knew I didn't want to make it too long since I was using the power of the sun for lighting, so I figured I would utilise exaggeration and easing to get a cartoony look for the bite, and then loop the chewing and have it reset from there. It definitely exudes a different tone from the original rat, but I don't think that's bad at all. So here's my first version, and it's okay. Ignoring the grass falling over in the background, the main issue is definitely still the wiggling, so I focused on that in my next attempt, which is the one I ended up going with. I don't think it's noticeable, but between these 2 animations, I lost some of the Slugcat's little teeth, which I forgot to say are also polymer clay, because oh my goodness, trying to make teeth at that scale with plasticine was an actual nightmare. So I switched, and then I lost them. So what I did was animate it with no top teeth and then digitally draw the teeth in. I don't think it's noticeable unless you pause, and I did consider animating a mouth as well, but I thought it would be neat to keep it mostly analog. That does mean I miss out on adding those iconic traits from the Aardman style, but I think it gives the Slugcat a Gromit type of vibe. Next time I'll definitely scale up and try and animate a mouth. After that I made a teeny weeny little bat fly and animated that to chuck in the background. Then for animation I was done. I did do some colour correction, or tried to, and added some sound effects from Rainworld, and there you go, Claymation Slugcat eating a blue fruit. If you recall the second part of the title, Embracing Imperfection, which hopefully I didn't decide to change after recording this, I thought it would be neat to talk about making art in spite of the big bitch that is art blog. Art block, for lack of a better name, has been looming over me for a while now, and being a person who gets a lot of joy out of making things, it was really getting me down. Everything I made just looked bleh, and I mean, that happens anyway. I think everyone sees flaws in their own art, and has a little inner monologue pointing out insignificant imperfections, but when it stops you from continuing to create, that's when it's a problem. So I figured I would just try anyway, and what better way than a different medium? I have little practice at Claymation anyway, so no pressure, just have fun and try and create something neat. And I'm really glad I ended up doing Claymation because I think to some extent those little imperfections are what make it so lovely. At least personally, I think the fact that we get to see the little fingerprints don't steal my identity, and the squishes for animators, makes it all the more charming. And to further that point, stop motion animation in general is much more uncontrollable than things like traditional and digital animation from my experience. When it comes to animating in those ways, I can control the exact line placement down to the pixel. For example, creating a loop digitally is much easier, as I can duplicate the first frame and create something that will match up nearly seamlessly. Whereas with Claymation, by the time I've got to the last few frames, my little clay creature has been irreversibly changed. Obviously a big factor in that is skill, but the lack of precision is sort of freeing. So, despite the fact my finished animation has the Slugcat still scooching around, the lighting is inconsistent, it isn't as free, and it doesn't loop like I wanted it to initially, I still learnt a bunch of helpful stuff about stop motion, so I can improve for next time. And of course, I still made an animation, and that's got to be better than creating nothing at all. I hope you enjoyed this little ramble, as well as the animation and process. Before I go, I'd like to thank my lovely patrons for supporting my animations. Huge grommet-sized thank you to RancidRevenant, Sniper Shark, The Orpa, Muffins, Cousin Sean, Yoshim, Anomalous, Calibri, Watcher VIB, Pixel, Meringue, Jepuli, HS Gem, Frank Fontaine, Jupiter, Opashu, Casey Dodger, Dimitri Pia, Val, Ike Pike, Evil, Whatever X equals, Star of the Storm, Sorrel Napalm, Coyotes, Pat Cat, Shori, Quantum Scugging It, Crayon 352, A Frightened Sloth, Ash Martin, BV, Saffrophyte, Ivy KB. If you'd like, consider joining my Patreon if you'd want to see more behind the scenes stuff of my animations and help make decisions via polls. That's all from me. I hope you have a lovely day and thank you for watching. Bye!